The generativist model of language learning, rooted in the theories of renowned linguist Noam Chomsky, represents one of the most influential perspectives in the field of linguistics and language acquisition. It posits that language learning is not simply a process of habit formation or environmental conditioning, but rather an innate, biologically determined capacity unique to humans. This article explores the key principles of the generativist model, its theoretical underpinnings, implications for language teaching, criticisms, and how it contrasts with other models of language learning. What is the generativist model? The generativist model, also known as generative grammar theory, is grounded in the belief that all humans are born with an inherent ability to acquire language. According to this view, the acquisition of language is facilitated by a specialized cognitive mechanism known as the language acquisition device, LAD, a hypothetical structure in the brain that enables individuals to internalize and produce language. Generative grammar, the heart of the generativist model, refers to a set of rules and principles that predict the structure of sentences in any language. Chomsky introduced the concept of universal grammar, UG, which postulates that there are underlying linguistic principles shared across all human languages. These principles form the basis of our innate language capacity and explain why young children are capable of learning any language with relatively little explicit instruction. Key features of the generativist model. 1. Language as an innate ability. The most defining feature of the generativist model is the notion that language is an innate biological capability. Unlike behaviorist or empiricist theories, which emphasize the role of environmental stimuli in language learning, the generativist model asserts that children are born with a predisposition for language. This nativist perspective implies that humans are equipped with a mental blueprint for language, which allows them to construct and understand an infinite number of sentences based on finite input. 2. Universal grammar, UG. A central tenet of the generativist model is universal grammar, a set of abstract linguistic principles that are common to all languages. UG is not a specific grammar of a language like English or French, but rather a theory that explains the shared properties of all human languages. It is the foundation upon which individuals build their knowledge of specific languages, e.g., syntax, morphology. Universal grammar helps to explain the poverty of the stimulus problem, which argues that children learn complex grammatical rules even when exposed to incomplete or imperfect linguistic input. 3. Language acquisition device, LAD. Chomsky's concept of the language acquisition device refers to the hypothetical mechanism in the human brain responsible for language learning. The LAD allows children to automatically generate and interpret sentences they have never heard before, based on the rules of universal grammar. While the LAD is considered a metaphor for the biological aspects of language acquisition, it highlights the view that language learning is largely an internal cognitive process rather than a purely external one dependent on environmental reinforcement. 4th, transformational generative grammar. Chomsky's early theories also introduced the idea of transformational generative grammar, a framework that seeks to explain how sentences can be transformed from deep structures, basic sentence meaning, into surface structures, actual, spoken, or written forms. This transformational process allows speakers to produce and understand an infinite variety of sentences using a finite set of rules. For example, the deep structure of a sentence like, "The boy is eating the cake," can be transformed into various surface forms, like, "Is the boy eating the cake?" or "The cake is being eaten by the boy." The critical period hypothesis. Though not exclusive to generativist theory, the critical period hypothesis, CPH, is closely associated with the nativist view of language acquisition. The CPH suggests that there is a biologically determined window during which language learning is most efficient, typically during early childhood. After this critical period, the ability to acquire language with native-like proficiency diminishes. This theory aligns with the generativist model in that it emphasizes the biological constraints on language learning. Implications of the generativist model for language learning and teaching. The generativist model has profound implications for both theoretical and applied linguistics, especially in the realms of language teaching and curriculum design. Below are some ways in which the model informs language education. 1. Emphasis on grammar instruction. Since the generativist model focuses heavily on grammatical structures, it supports explicit grammar instruction as a means of enhancing learners' understanding of language rules. Teachers may emphasize syntactic rules and sentence construction, helping students internalize the structures of the target language. Instructors might encourage students to generate their own sentences based on rules, in line with the generative capacity of language. 2. Minimizing the role of habit formation. Unlike behaviorist approaches, which emphasize rote memorization and repetition, the generativist model suggests that language learning is less about forming habits through practice and more about uncovering underlying rules. This shifts the focus in classrooms from mechanical drills to tasks that engage students in constructing sentences based on their internalized understanding of grammar. 3. Error, correction, and hypothesis testing. In the generativist approach, errors are seen as part of the natural language learning process, reflecting the learner's attempt to apply underlying rules. Teachers can use errors as diagnostic tools to understand what grammatical rules learners are formulating. Instruction may then focus on guiding learners toward correct hypotheses about the language rules, rather than solely focusing on error elimination through repetition. 4. Teaching across different languages. The generativist model's concept of universal grammar suggests that certain aspects of language are common across all languages, which can be leveraged in teaching. For example, teachers might draw attention to similarities in sentence structure between a learner's native language and the target language, facilitating the learning process by connecting new concepts to pre-existing knowledge of linguistic rules. 5. Teaching language to young learners. The model's support of the critical period hypothesis suggests that language instruction for young learners is especially effective. Language programs may prioritize early language education, capitalizing on children's natural ability to acquire language. Immersive environments where learners are exposed to the target language in meaningful contexts align with the idea that children will naturally uncover language rules through interaction. Criticisms of the generativist model. Despite its widespread influence, the generativist model has faced considerable criticism from various linguists and educators, particularly in light of alternative theories of language learning. 1. Overemphasis on innateness. One of the primary criticisms of the generativist model is its strong focus on the innate aspects of language learning, potentially downplaying the role of environmental factors, such as input, social interaction, and cultural context. Critics argue that language learning involves a complex interplay between biological predispositions and external influences, and the generativist model may not adequately account for this interaction. 2. Lack of focus on communication and meaning. Another criticism is that the generativist model's focus on grammatical structures and rules may overlook the functional and communicative aspects of language. Critics argue that language is not just a set of abstract rules, but a tool for communication, and understanding meaning in context is as important as understanding syntax. The communicative language teaching, CLT approach, which focuses on meaning-making and authentic communication, arose partly in response to the limitations of generative grammar in the classroom. Third, empirical evidence. While the generativist model is theoretically robust, critics argue that it lacks sufficient empirical evidence, particularly regarding the existence of universal grammar. Research has shown significant variation in how languages are acquired and used, leading some to question the idea that all languages share a common underlying structure. Conclusion. The generativist model has had a lasting impact on our understanding of language learning and teaching, particularly in its emphasis on the innate capacity for language acquisition and the role of grammatical rules in language development. It provides a framework for understanding how humans are able to generate and comprehend novel sentences using a finite set of linguistic principles. However, the model's focus on grammar and innateness has been both its strength and its limitation, as it may downplay the importance of communicative interaction, social context, and meaningful language use in the learning process. While the generativist model continues to influence language teaching practices, it is often integrated with other approaches, such as communicative or interactionist models, to provide a more holistic understanding of how languages are learned and taught.